It is talkSPORT 2, it is the social. Sam, Ellard and Kweku Afari with you until 5 o'clock this evening. Let's now talk all things Man City and the big news today, the breaking news. Kevin De Bruyne has announced he will leave Man City when his contract expires at the end of the season. He's won 16 trophies since joining City from Wolfsburg back in 2015. He won 6 Premier League titles at Champions League in 2023. He scored 106 goals in 413 appearances for City, who described him as a global icon of the game. Kweku, I mean, just for me, simply, genuinely one of my favourite players I've ever watched in the Premier League. There's something majestic about him. De Bruyne in his prime, the ability to, in fact, you know what, let's hear from Pep, shall we? Before we give our take, let's hear from Man City manager Pep Guardiola, who had his take on it earlier.
A happy day for the fact that the pleasure personally that we live, or I live this time with him. What he gave us, all of us, his humanity, and of course, don't necessarily tell his influence in our success in the last decade. That will be impossible to imagine, without him. And it's a day because, of course, it's part of us. He's living. So when Vincent left, or Sergio left, or David Silva left, and these players have been contribution, and I will say more names. So these example 3. Of course, it's a time that it's a sad day. So, but still we have 10 games and hopefully 11 and 6 games at home that we can enjoy with our fans, and he will get, I'm pretty sure, the love and the recognition that all of us, fans, of course, that he deserves.
Yeah, I'm sure he will. He absolutely will. I mean, Kweku, I think in football, we all love the quick, tricky, pacey wingers. They get you off your seat. They score all the goals. But there was something majestic about watching Kevin De Bruyne in his prime. That ability to almost move anywhere on the pitch. And basically, essentially, it feels like he could ping a ball anywhere he wanted, under any circumstance. I mean, in particular, that kind of right-hand side where he pick up the ball, and how often would we see him take one touch, get his head up, and play that whip ball in between goalkeeper and defenders, right into Sergio Aguero, right into Erling Haaland. So good in tight spaces, technically so good. And I genuinely think that if you put together an all-time Premier League 11, and I know this isn't a new debate, but I genuinely think I'd have a place for him. If you're going for a 4-3-3, which is the kind of the new norm now, the kind of common formation, you're finding room for Kevin De Bruyne in your midfield. An absolute genius, an absolute magician, and genuinely one of the best players we've seen in Premier League history.
I agree. I completely agree. I describe him as a needle mover. He's a player that can change the direction of the game with a couple of actions, whether it's an assist or a goal from long range. And unlike the other Premier League greats, that they had this sense of cult of personality, where it was not just about their on-field ability, it was about what they brought off the field commercially as well. Kevin De Bruyne was just strictly football, and there was a beauty in that. And we saw City struggle in his absence. We saw when he came back into that City lineup last season how the title race changed. He's one of these players that will be remembered forever. And when you do that all-time Premier League 11, the midfield's the most competitive place, right? You've got the Keanes, the Vieiras, the Lampards, the Gerrards, the Scholes. But for me, De Bruyne goes in there, and then you find places for the others that we're talking about. An absolutely incredible footballer. And that legacy that Company, Silva and Aguero left, he carried that on and dragged City in this new era. Pep Guardiola, he's pretty steadfast in the fact that when Messi was in his prime, Messi was the best player in the world. But he said below that is Kevin De Bruyne. And that's how good he is. That's coming from arguably the greatest manager of all time. And I feel like the Premier League would be a worse league as a result of him not being in it, because he was a bona fide superstar. And what he gave to English football for the last decade cannot be underestimated. And bear in mind, his story is not linear. He was at Chelsea. He had to go away. He had to go to Germany, find himself again, came back. That famous Paul Merson clip where he said that he's going to be a flop in the Premier League. He's been far from a flop. He's one of the greatest we've ever seen.
Yeah, he's done okay, hasn't he? He's got it right. Just the 16 trophies at Man City. It feels like the right time, though, for him to kind of move on. He's had some injuries, hasn't he, over the last 18 months. We kind of know that City almost in the summer are going to have to rebuild and go again. Do you kind of feel inevitable that he was maybe going to move on in the summer?
Yeah, I think it's quite sad when you see superstars playing on in the Premier League longer than you would like.
Leave the football before the football leaves you, as
Leave the
Jamie
football
Carragher
before the
says.
football leaves you. He's going to find somewhere else to play where he's going to get paid a lot of money. This has been on the cards for a little while, and obviously with City's sharp decline this season, it makes sense for him to move on and for them to move on. And I know that this is a day to celebrate Kevin De Bruyne, but I can't help but think about Phil Foden. And this is your opportunity. This has been Kevin De Bruyne's team, right? Even with the emergence of Ellard, who scored so many goals in his first 3 seasons of Man City, I've always viewed this as being Kevin De Bruyne's team. It's built in his image. Now De Bruyne moves on. It's time for Phil Foden, who's had a very poor season this year, to step up and be that guy. Be the face of Man City. You're from the area, from the academy. You've played there all your life. People expect so much from you. You're an incredibly talented player. There is now a space for somebody to be the face of that football club, and that man has to be Phil Foden.
Do you think he is long-term better playing more century? I like Phil when he's able to roam, he's able to drop deep and influence games from there, as opposed to being stuck out on the right-hand side.
Yeah, more centrally.
Yeah.
That's where he can affect games. That's where we've all seen, in my mind, when Phil Foden was coming through, I viewed him as a player who played in the number 10. That position doesn't really exist as it used to in football, but Phil Foden has to be the fulcrum of that team.
2-8s now, isn't he? Got his 6s and 2-8s kind of either side, right?
Yeah, I just think Phil Foden has to start delivering for City in a big way, like he did last season. Let's not forget how good he was last year. He scored some incredible. Remember the goal at the Bernabeu? Remember the goal on the final day of the season? Scored so many league goals. We need to see him return to that form. But in terms of a day of celebrating Kevin De Bruyne, like I said, when you talk about the Gerrards, the Lampards, the Vieira, the Scholes, the Keane, he's right in there.
100% agree. We're going to miss Kevin De Bruyne, some player. On the Manchester derby, Kweku. I mean, Man United, it's almost like they're still so bad.
Terrible.
And he's been there for, 5 months now? Mm-hmm. And I'm watching the Forest game, and you know what you're going to get when you play against Forest. They're going to sit pretty deep. You're going to have the majority of possession. And I'm watching the United game. I mean, they are toothless in attack.
Yeah.
He's playing a system where the wing-back's so important in his system, and the wing-backs aren't good enough. Yeah. With the new boy, I haven't seen anything to be impressed by him yet. Dalot, I don't think is a right wing-back. Mesraoui had to go there, didn't he? Yeah. Before Dorgu came in. There is no creativity in midfield. The 2 centre forwards they bought, Højlund and Xerxes.
Yeah.
I mean, goodness me, Kweku.
Yeah.
The lack of quality between them. I mean, Harry Maguire came off the bench for 5 minutes, didn't he? And he caused Forest more problems in those 5 minutes than the other 2 lads did all game. And I'm trying to look and I'm trying to see patterns building. Like when Arteta's Arsenal, when he first joined Arsenal, when they were a poor team, they were struggling, at least you could try and you could see what he was trying to implement.
Yeah.
With this Man United team, I'm looking and watching, and I just can't see anything. Yeah. I'm not sure what he's trying to do and how it gets better.
Yeah, no, I agree. And when he first came in, I was very excited. But we have to also gauge it from a macro level in terms of that football club. We've seen people come away from that football club and look reinvented. When you see a Marcus Rashford or you see an Anthony, even a Betis, like there is something toxic at that football club that they need to remove. I'm not quite ready yet to say Amrim's not the guy to fix Manchester United. I think all their eggs are in the basket of winning the Europa League, and if they do that, next season will look a lot different for them with the increase in funds that they can spend on players. But they've just been unimpressive under Amrim. He's not really turned things around. And would you say they're better off in the league than they would have been under Erik ten Hag? I don't think so, because you can't get much worse than this if you're Manchester United. This derby on the weekend is a perfect opportunity for Amrim, though, to really start to build up into the Europa League game and also build up into next season. Think about his 2 signature wins this season, both at Sporting and at Manchester United. Both results against City.
Course, yeah.
That 4-1 win in the Champions League for Sporting against City. The 2-1 win at Etihad for United against City. I wouldn't say that he's got Pep Guardiola's number, but he seems to have some problems with that system. So that might come to fruition on the weekend. But for Manchester United, this has been an absolutely terrible season. And if they do not win the Europa League, I don't know where they go from here, because what this club has shown over the last 2 or 3 years is, despite the fact they've been poor in the league, they've got the propensity to win cup competitions.
Yeah.
They won the Carabao Cup 2 years ago. They won the FA Cup last year. They can win cup competitions, but that's the only saving grace for this season, which has been an absolute disgrace. Yeah,
it is remarkable. I mean, you get through the whole team, and you could almost argue that they needed pretty much a whole new starting 11. Like in terms of what they've got and who's good enough. You're literally looking at a couple of players. I mean, maybe Mainu, maybe Ahmad when fit, Bruno. I mean, that's literally it. There's a couple of players. I mean, they're not just like, a few positions away from being better. They're almost like a whole team away from being able to compete again for the big trophy. So, and I agree with you. Whilst it's not good enough, I still completely agree that I still think Ruben Amorim deserves the opportunity to have another summer window where he can bring in his own players and obviously bring in players that are better suited to his system. But at the moment, it's such hard work. But you wouldn't put it past them, would you, to win that Europa League?
You wouldn't put it past them. That's the kind of team they've been over the last couple of years. You mentioned the system real quick. I think it would be a mistake long term to bring in players that are specifically suited to his system, because we know how volatile football is. Amorim might not be there this time next year. The issues they've got right now is that Xerxes was a Ten Hag player. These players that he brought in, De Ligt was arguably a Ten Hag player.
Quaker, we know he is so wedded to this system, right? So he's literally going to have, I'm sure, a list of players that he wants that is so specific for his system. If you then got the Man United hierarchy going, hang on a minute, actually, they're obviously not going to say to him, we're not going to sign these players because they might sack you. It's going to be an absolute mess. It's going to be an absolute shambles. So I take your point, I get that, but it feels like they put a lot of investment into Ruben Amorim. Yeah. I just don't see that. I think if he goes, I need these players to suit my system, you specifically brought me in to implement into this football club, then I need these players. Otherwise, what's the point, right?
It's dangerous.
It's dangerous, yeah. So Man United Man City is a Sunday 4:30 game, and we can plug our own show on Sunday, can't we? If you are on your smart TVs or on talkSPORT's YouTube channel, Gabe's going to be watching. Myself, Kweku, and a host of other people will be doing a watch along on Sunday afternoon from 1:30 to 6:30. 5-hour show, Kweku.
Excited.
Looking forward to it. You're listening to talkSPORT to the Social with William Hill, 18 plus, begambleaware.org. Up next, we're talking Villa Forest, and we've got one more race entry.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app, and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.